Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes pretty fast if you're the Car Chick. Now, here she is.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Straight Shift. Okay, you're probably going to want to kill me because I know the last podcast I was supposed to do part 2 on the electrified cars, but I interrupted that series to do a podcast on some additional information about what's going on with the manufacturers skimping on some options while they're producing cars. And then I promised I would get back to the electric car thing. Well, I'm sorry, but more information has come up, more things are changing in the market that I really need to get this information out to everyone. So part 2 of electrified cars is getting pushed off again. We interrupt this regular series to talk about what's really going on in the industry because this information is much more timely. I promise I will tell you all about electric cars, but you can't get them right now anyway. So this information is actually more important to get out to you today, mostly because I have been encountering this situation over the last week or so, and I am ready to pull my hair out. So when I am getting frustrated with something, I want to make sure that the information gets out to you guys so that if you're experiencing the same frustration trying to shop for cars, you'll at least understand what's going on and why you're banging your head into the wall. And when I come up with strategies to get around these things or to still find solutions for people, I want to share that with you. Because as much as I would love to work with every single person to buy a car, I just can't. So for those of you that are going to be tackling this on your own, I want to make sure you have the straight shift information about this. So what's going on? What I am seeing is people needing to get a car fast. And getting a car fast during an inventory shortage is not an easy thing to do. A reason a lot of these people are coming to me saying, I need a car by March 1st or I need a car by April 1st is because their employers are now saying, you know, you've been working from home for 2 years now, but the COVID cases are dropping. We're starting to move out of the pandemic into the endemic phase. Life is going to start to get back to normal. We want your butt back in the office. So people that sold their car during the pandemic and were enjoying just having one car, or maybe they live in the city and have been using public transportation, and now all of a sudden they have to go out to the suburbs for work. They're like, oh crap, I need a car. And they're realizing that there are no new cars. And I was getting frustrated with people because I was thinking, come on, guys, there are no cars. Why would you wait till now to say I need a car? But I took a breath and remembered that not everyone lives and breathes this every single day like I do. And sure, there's this information in the news, and I think we're all very jaded to the information that is in the news, you know, after the last several years. So I get that the average person who is not living in the automotive industry on a day-to-day basis probably does not realize just how bad the inventory shortage really is. And I have been saying this on my podcast, but the situation continues to evolve, or rather, I should say the situation continues to devolve. And there's changes every week, and I'm learning new things every single day that I'm shopping all over the country. So what has happened most recently is that the Omicron wave of COVID hit Japan. It's been hitting different countries at different times. It hit, Britain back in the earlier fall, and it didn't hit the United States until after Thanksgiving. And so we're now kind of on the downslope of that wave, but it didn't hit Japan until late January. So they're still in the middle of dealing with a huge surge in COVID cases due to Omicron. And that is putting further crimps on the supply chain, particularly in the production of the computer chips. Yep, we're going to say it again. We can't build cars because there's not enough damn computer chips. So what's happened is the car manufacturers that have plants in Japan have had to shut down those plants for a day here or 2 days there, just because they have not been able to get the chips. And so they've had to literally idle their plants for a period of time. And that means that they are not producing cars. The two biggest manufacturers that have been affected by this are Subaru and Toyota. For Subaru, this is affecting the production of the Forester, which is one of my favorite small SUVs, so I'm heartbroken, as well as the smaller Crosstrek, because those are both built at their plants in Japan. They've got two plants that produce those two cars, and then they have another plant in Japan that produces the engines. And so even for the vehicles like the Outback, the Legacy sedan, and the 3-row SUV, the Ascent, even though those are built here in the United States at their Indiana plant, 40% of their parts come from Japan. So they are still struggling to build the cars here because the supply chain in Japan. Don't you just love a global economy? But it's really, really affecting the Foresters, which are, of course, what I'm shopping for right now. So similarly with Toyota, it's affecting the production of some of the RAV4s. Some RAV4s are produced in Japan, some are produced in Canada. They spread things around a little bit, but most of the hybrids, especially the Prius, that's produced in Japan, and all the Lexus luxury cars. So remember, Lexus is Toyota's super swanky brand, so Lexus is being affected by this as well. 2 days of shutting down a plant doesn't sound like a lot, because you think, oh, if I have to be out of work for 2 days, I get a little bit behind, but it's not a big deal. But if you think about each of these plants, normally spits out a good 2,500 or more cars per day. Now you're talking about a day of shutdown here, a couple days here, a couple days there. Subaru's been shut down for at least 6 days that I know of. So that across all their plants, including how it's affecting the ability to produce the cars here in the United States. Okay, so now you're talking 30,000 cars have not been produced in just the last couple of weeks. That's a really significant amount. And so all the dealers are not getting their cars. Toyota, same thing. They lost production on 47,000 cars across their two plants just from a 6-day shutdown. So when you really start doing the math, it adds up really, really quickly. And then we see that as the dealers are not getting the cars that they would normally have been allocated, which were reduced already because production has been cut because we don't have enough computer chips. So it's just compounding and getting worse. I literally bought a few Foresters, over December, and they came in January. And so I was thinking, oh, I haven't had any problems getting Foresters, so let's, look at a Forester for this client. Only to find out, well, guess what? The Forester production just came to a screeching halt, and now we might not be able to get one. I was lucky for this one client, and because I have such great relationships with Subaru, one of my best dealers had one inbound. It's going to be here sometime in March that is going to work for my client that we can get, and she's not charging me over sticker, thank goodness. So that we got lucky and that worked out, but it's still, the person is going to have to, probably rent a car in order to get to work starting March 1st, because this car won't be here quite by then. So we're just seeing a lot of additional challenges, and it's a very fluid situation. As we move from this pandemic into the endemic phase, which means that this virus just becomes a part of our daily lives, just like regular cold and flu viruses do. And we don't have this massive number of cases. The hospitals aren't overloaded. People aren't out sick from work. Things are going to start to improve, but remember what I've said about the production of computer chips. That is not something that can just ramp up overnight. There is a very long lead time to increasing that type of manufacturing capacity. So again, we are in this for at least another year, probably at least 2 years, with inventory levels of new cars not being anywhere near normal levels. So some other crimps in our style that I have come across this week If you want fully loaded, super swanky, all the bells and whistles, all the luxury features, all the crazy technology, you might not get it. And while I did that podcast a couple of weeks ago, and if you didn't catch that one, go back and listen, it is not just about the manufacturers maybe building the cars without, one or two technology items. GM has, and they did this last July and still have not lifted it. And several other manufacturers did this for a lot of their higher end luxury cars that have a lot of crazy technology that requires a lot of computer chips. They put a 100% full production stop on them. And some are starting to lift that, but others are not. So another situation that I have encountered this week with a client who really wants a fully loaded Chevy Tahoe Z71 with the luxury package and the driver assist package and pretty much every cool bell and whistle you can put on it, I had to tell him we can't order it because GM has a 100% stop production. And that also then goes for the similar Yukon and the Cadillac Escalade. So they've just said, we're not making them. And he was a little confused, understandably so, because he had been told by a dealer, yeah, we can order those. Well, here's what you need to know about that. One, when you call a dealer, you're usually talking to a salesperson, not necessarily the general manager like I'm talking to. A salesperson may not know exactly what's going on with the ordering situation because it's above their pay grade. And they want to tell you, sure, we can order that car for you because they want you to come in. They want to take your deposit. And in some cases, for these really high-end cars, they may be asking for several thousand, up to $5,000 deposits for these cars, not just the usual $500 or $1,000. They want your money. And then they're going to place the order because GM does technically let you enter the order into their production system, where it will sit indefinitely until they lift the stop production. And they don't know when they're going to do that. We don't know when they're going to do that. So there have been people that technically ordered a super fancy Yukon or super fancy Tahoe last summer, and it's just still sitting out there in automotive limbo. So take with a grain of salt what any dealer tells you. And different dealers will tell you different things. I call so many dealers all the time. And even within a certain geography, if I'm shopping in Chicago or I'm shopping in Seattle, I will call 10 different dealers in those areas. And I will often get 10 different stories. And so, it's about kind of weeding through what's really true. And that's when I just escalate to the very top of the food chain and be like, what's going on? And working with the dealers that I have long-term relationships with and I trust them. They're not going to lie to me. And so the GM calls me back and says, okay, yeah, so here's what's really going on. So you have to ask the right questions. If you're trying to order a car, you need to ask because they may tell you, oh yeah, it's a 3 to 6 month time frame to order that car. Well, that 3 to 6 month time frame may be referring to the more kind of normal mainstream models that don't have all the luxury features. It may be referring to the $50,000 model, not the $80,000 model that they see orders for most often. And yeah, that may be 3 to 6 months. But the one you want to order, because you want the very best for yourself, and I don't blame you, but that order may take a lot longer, or it may be that indefinite. They are not building these cars at all right now, and we don't know when that will lift. So you have to ask those types of questions and be prepared to hear an answer that you're not going to want to hear. I understand, when you can afford an $85,000 luxury vehicle, you don't want to have to settle. And I don't care if you're buying a $20,000 car. I don't want you to have to settle. I don't believe in settling. But the reality is they're not building them, period. So there's really not a choice. We are in an unprecedented time. Our grandparents, remember back to the Great Depression and World War II. Some of them may still be around from World War I, if they're that old. But there were times when you just couldn't get things. You couldn't get butter. during the war. My mom talks about that from her childhood. There were rations. You couldn't get real butter. You couldn't get all these things. And we haven't lived through that because we do have a global supply chain and we tend to be a little more insulated from that. But guess what? The whole global supply chain is affected. And so I'm sorry, but you may have to just come to the reality that you're not going to get what you want right now. Some of the manufacturers have started to lift it. A lot of this depends on their supplier relationships and where they get their computer chips and what country they're built in and what that supply chain looks like and what their COVID situation looks like. So I also spoke with someone today that wanted to order a Mercedes S560 Maybach. I love when people with really awesome taste call me. It's so much fun. And those you've not been able to order either. Same thing with the G-Wagons. They haven't been building them. Mercedes is like, sorry, not building them. Well, earlier this week, they lifted that order, but each dealership that deals in those cars is only getting 1 or 2 allocations to build those per year, like not per month, per year. And if there's already a line, so I talked to my best Mercedes contact, and he said, well, if you want the S580, the V8 version, you're probably looking 1 to 2 years if we order it this week. If you want the 12-cylinder version, you're probably looking at 3 years wait for this car. So you're going to have to plan ahead with these vehicles. Ordering and getting it in 3 months on these super luxury cars, not going to happen. The Audi A6 that I ordered back in September, we're not going to get till May, but at least we have a production slot for that one. For some other manufacturers, I'm still shaking my head trying to figure out what their strategy is for picking up orders in their system and deciding which cars they're actually going to build that people have submitted orders for. One would logically think that it would be a first in, first out, first come, first serve situation. Oh no, that would be too easy. It's apparently not. So I finally got a hold, escalating up the food chain, a Kia manager, because I ordered a Telluride for a client at the end of October, and we thought it was going to be 3 to 4 months. And for other Tellurides that I've ordered, that's what it's been. This one is still sitting out there in order limbo, meaning it is submitted to Kia. It's sitting in their system, but the status is still open. It has not been picked up and slotted into a production slot yet. So it's in that automotive limbo. And I don't know why. It's not the fully loaded version. It's actually a very conservative version that's not going to take nearly as many computer chips. Why have they not built this yet? Well, I don't know. And none of the Kia managers know. And they have spoken to their district reps from Kia Corporate who don't know. And so we're thinking that it might be the throw a dart at a dartboard method of selecting which cars they're going to build. I don't know. But again, you have to, when the dealer tells you, oh, it's going to be about 3 or 4 months, take that with a grain of salt. They don't really know that. The dealers do not get 100% information, and the manufacturers are just, some of them are using a methodology for deciding what cars to produce that no one has been able to decipher. It's really, really weird. So I'm a little irritated with Kia on that. Another frustrating thing is, when you order a car, you tend to go out to the manufacturer's website where they have that, build your own whatever. And you go through that build process because that allows you to choose the trim level you want and choose front wheel drive or all wheel drive, choose your colors, choose all your packages, all of your accessories. And then it prints out that nice build spec that you can then give to the dealer and say, I want this one, please build it for me. Well, those websites are not entirely accurate anymore. The manufacturers have been having to increase the MSRP, the sticker price of the cars, because their supply chain costs are going up. And they may not be updating the prices on their websites. So you can build the car and you build it and it says it's going to be, $42,550. Well, actually it's going to be probably $2,000 more than that because they increased their prices but didn't bother to update their website to the consumer. How frustrating is that? And sometimes they are not updating the options. So you can build it with all the packages, but when the dealer then tries to go in and actually build the order in the manufacturer's system, all of a sudden they're like, oh, nope, you can't order it with that package. Oh, nope, we can't order it with that package. So I'm ordering a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392. That's the four-door Wrangler with the Hemi in it and like all the off-roading stuff. It's really cool. It's like an $80,000 Jeep. And fortunately, we can order it, but it's going to take a while. But one of the packages that we built on the website, we couldn't actually order it with that package. Fortunately, it's a wheel and tire package that I don't know why we can't get that, but we can get those wheels and tires aftermarket, probably for less money anyway. So fortunately, my client was like, that's fine. And so we went ahead and submitted the order. But the pricing that we got when we built the order in Chrysler system was a couple $1,000s higher than what it was when we built it on Jeep.com. And I knew it would be, and I warned my client that it would be because I knew Jeep had raised their prices, but they're like 90 days behind in updating their website. And even the dealers I'm working with are so frustrating. They are so angry because it makes them look like the bad guy. Why are you charging me more than what it is on the website? The website says I can have it for this. Well, the website is wrong. So be mad at Jeep. Don't be mad at the Jeep dealer. They are just as frustrated. So be aware that if you build it out on whatevercarmanufacturer.com, you may not get that exact build, and it may be more money than what they say it is because they're not updating their damn websites. How difficult is that, people? Come on. And another thing that I am finding, and this is very inconsistent, and it varies by dealership. One of my strategies has been, if we can't find the car in your area or the dealers in your area are being jerks and charging bazillions of dollars over sticker, well, let's look outside your geography and maybe buy it, one state over and then ship it in and still save money. Some dealers are not selling outside their geography anymore. And in some cases, there are some restraints from the manufacturer. So, for example, Subaru, the manufacturer has said, you can sell, 3 or 4 cars a month outside your franchise area. Because remember, these are franchises, and so there are certain agreements. And the franchise agreements are radically different between the different manufacturers. So Subaru is telling its dealers, you can sell, 3 or 4 cars outside your geography every month, and we're okay with it. But if you sell any more than that, then we're going to penalize you, and you have to pay a penalty of $500 per car for doing that. And of course, the dealers are really mad about that because they're like, look, the situation is really, really bad, and people are willing to fly in from across the country just to get the car. Everybody's just trying to get a car. Don't penalize us because then that penalizes the customer. So, that's a Subaru thing. Sometimes it is not something from the manufacturer, but that dealership principal, the person who owns the dealership or dealership group has said, you're not allowed to sell outside the state. We're only going to sell locally, or we're only going to sell within our state because we're trying to keep the inventory with our local customers who are then going to come to us for service. When a dealer sells outside their geography, that's just a sale, and they're probably never going to see that person again. Dealers really do want to try and establish a relationship so that you come back for service and future sales, etc. And so they're trying to keep that inventory for the people in their local area that they have a chance at a long-term relationship with. I totally get that. So some dealerships will sell to you if you're out of state, some will not. I had that situation with this Jeep that I'm ordering out in Seattle. I'm buying it from the Tacoma dealer because all the dealerships in Seattle were trying to charge, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 over sticker to place this order, and not going to do that. So the nice Tacoma dealership said, yeah, we'll order it for you at MSRP, no problem. But is your customer in Washington State? Because we're not allowed to sell cars outside of Washington State. I'm like, yeah, he's just up in Seattle. It's no problem. We're all good to go. So be aware of that as you're shopping around and you're looking outside your geography. You may find out that I'm sorry, we're not allowed to sell cars outside our geography, and they just can't sell the car to you, even though if they could, you could get a really, fair deal in this market. Some good news is that, as I said, some of these dealers are charging ridiculous amounts of money over MSRP. Well, Ford and GM have caught on to this, and some of their dealers were really being some of the biggest buttheads about it. And they issued a memo the beginning of last week from literally the CEOs of Ford and GM. And the memos went out to all their franchise dealers and says, if we catch you selling a car over MSRP, we will pull your franchise. That is huge, huge news. Now, it doesn't stop the dealers from maybe putting an accessory package on the car and still, squeezing a few more $1,000s out of you, but at least you're getting something in return. It's not just we're marking up the car because we can. And hopefully now that Ford and GM have laid down, put their hammer down on that, I hope Chrysler will follow. I hope some of the other manufacturers will also follow suit. But it's amazing to me how a lot of the manufacturers don't realize that this is happening. So again, I know a lot about what goes on internally at Subaru because I have so many strong relationships at many different levels in that company. And I know that there are certain dealers who are charging just MSRP. They're playing by the rules. They're not being jerks. When they see other dealerships price gouging, they report that dealership to the manufacturer and be like, hey, do you know what this guy's doing? I mean, they're being, total tattletales, but I don't blame them. They should be tattletaling on the dealers that are charging over sticker. And so the manufacturer's like, what? They act surprised and appalled. It's like, really? Are you not paying attention to what your franchisees are doing? I'm like, just don't even act surprised. You should be staying on top of this. That's your job as the franchisor to protect your brand. And that's really what it has come down to with the memo from Ford and GM. And I'm not going to read that because I don't really feel like I have the right to read an internal memo, even though I have seen it. But it basically said, it looks bad for our brand that you're price gouging. I understand the market. Everybody's trying to make money, but the reality is the dealers are making money hand over fist right now. They are making more money right now on less cars than they ever have. So I have no sympathy for the ones that are charging over sticker. They want to charge sticker in this market, fine, that I get. But over sticker ticks me off, and it's also, taken off the corporations now because they're realizing this is, in the grand scheme of things, this is going to hurt our brand image because people are going to remember that the dealership, the Ford dealership down the street or the GM dealership down the street or whoever it was charging over sticker for these cars. And in long term, people are going to remember, I remember they did that during the pandemic, so I'm not going to buy that brand anymore. I'm going to go over here to this other brand. So I think it really is a brand management decision, and I highly encourage the other manufacturers to follow suit and very quickly. But at least your GM dealers, your Chevy, GMC, Buick, they are not allowed to do that anymore, nor is Ford Lincoln. So that helps. If you do order a car from them, it'll be at sticker. It's not going to be over. And if you do find a dealer trying to charge you over sticker, remind them of that memo and go ahead and call that customer service number on the manufacturer's website and report that dealership. All right, I'm going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to give you some of my strategies that I'm using with my clients right now. If you do need a car quickly, because maybe you have to go back to the office, I'm so sorry. Let me give you some strategies, but I will be right back after this. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of or about finding the right car at a great price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 704-248-8706. That's 704-248-8706. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Nice to meet you. Love your asphalt.
Hey, nice treads.
It's Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Straight Shift. Today we are talking about what to do if you need a car quickly because maybe you got a new job or your employer has now said you can't work from home anymore. We want your butt back in the office. And you're like, oh crap, I need a car because I sold mine during the pandemic and we were fine as a family on one car and now we're not. So, because the inventory situation is so bad for new cars, you may not be able to get what you want. So getting a car fast is kind of a relative term. You know, fast doesn't necessarily mean today. It might mean in a month. So keep in mind, fast is a relative term, but you may very well find that what you really want, you're not going to be able to get in the time frame that you need to have a set of wheels to get to work. And as I've said, I really don't believe in settling, not just for cars, but in anything in life. But the reality is you may need to have a reality check with yourself and say, okay, what really are my priorities? You know, getting to work, I need wheels and I need wheels fast. And there is a very limited supply of wheels out there, or, do I really need these features? Or can I live without them because we're just not living in a normal world and, I don't really need the massaging seats. It would be really nice when commuting in traffic, but I can live without that. So have a very serious talk with yourself on what you truly, truly need. So here, what I've been talking with my clients is we may need to make a tactical purchase to get you a vehicle that's going to get you to work by the time your butt has to be back in the office, and then plan ahead for the more strategic purchase in a couple of years when, hopefully, knock on wood, the market starts to normalize again. So here are some different strategies. You may need to look at a different make and model car than you were originally thinking. So even within a certain category, some manufacturers are doing better than others. So for example, in the compact SUV category, which is a very popular category, I love Subaru Foresters. I dearly love them. RAV4 hybrids, great car, but you can't get them right now. Not quickly necessarily. You might find one that's not pre-sold, but most of them are sold a good 3 months into the production pipeline. For some reason, Mazda seems to be doing a little bit better. And I've been able to buy CX-5s, today. It's on the ground. It's at the dealership. It's for sale. We can buy it today. So, you may need to look at some model cars that you might not have considered before. And that could be a good opportunity to discover a car that you might really love that you just hadn't thought about because you didn't have as much brand awareness of it. So that needs to be a strategy. Find out what is actually available. And to do that, you're going to have to pick up the phone because just going to the dealer's website and looking at their inventory list isn't going to do you a bit of good. The dealer's website is plugged automatically into their back-end inventory system. So the cars that they get from the manufacturer come into their system and they end up on the website. Most of those cars, if not all of them, are pre-sold. So it says it's available. It's not. You have to pick up the phone and call. You might need to buy a used car. And I know that really stinks because one, if you like having new cars because you don't want to buy a car that, has a history, you want your own brand new car that nobody else has touched. And the used car prices are so high that it's nauseating to look and see the price of a 2-year-old used car with 20,000 miles is what MSRP is on a brand new one. I mean, that makes me sick, but it's the reality. Used car prices are up 40 to 50%. It's ridiculous. But if you are in this much of a pinch and you need a car quickly, you may not have a lot of choices. You may have to make the decision to buy a used car just tactically, even if you're only going to keep it for a year. And, then, you're going to go make plans to order what you really want. That may actually be the least bad decision that you can make. A lot of people have said, well, I'll just rent a car, for a few until mine comes in. Okay, that's a strategy. So I thought, okay, no, the rental car companies aren't exactly flush with inventory either. And renting a car is expensive anyway. So I thought, okay, well, what is it to rent a car for a month or for multiple months? Can you even do that right now? I mean, I've had long term rentals before back, 100 years ago in my corporate America um, project management consulting life. We had long term rentals all the time, and I knew what they cost the company back then. But what is it in this environment? So I picked up the phone and called the people over at Enterprise today. And yes, they do have long-term rentals. You can rent, month to month, and you do get a discount when you have a monthly rental. And so a monthly rental starting tomorrow through a month on a basic Ford Escape, not like a total, like Mitsubishi Mirage Econobox, but a little Ford Escape, nothing fancy, $2,200 a month. So if you're thinking you're going to rent a car for a few months until the one you ordered comes in, you might want to check some prices first because, you are better off buying a less expensive used car and even paying the taxes and the DMV fees and then reselling it in 6 months. You may actually lose less money doing that than if you pay $2,000 a month to rent a little car that might not even suit your needs, that might not fit your family. So, just saying, oh, I'll just rent for a while. You really need to do some research and some math there because that is financially probably not a good idea. And don't think that the dealer is going to give you a loaner car. They wouldn't do that in a good market. And they don't have any loaners right now for the most part because they're selling those. And, they don't have cars to rent. They don't have a car to lease you for a short-term lease. The point is there's no cars. So, the rentals are extraordinarily expensive, although it was all I could do not to laugh at the poor agent. It's not her fault what the price is, but literally when she said $2,200 to rent a Ford Escape for a month, it was all I could do not to just bust out laughing because that would have been rude. But I hung up the phone and I busted out laughing. So, that may not be a reasonable option. Now, you might be able to, if you only have to go into the office a day or, 1 day a week or 2 days a week, just renting for those 2 days, that's still going to add up. And it's the inconvenience of then, every week you've got to go to the rental car agency and, get the car, although Enterprise will often bring it to you. But, there's some logistics and paperwork and, doing that every single week, that's going to get old for a while. If you live in a city that Turo is, or those types of, renting a car from a normal person versus a rental car company, we don't have a lot of that in Charlotte. So I'm not as educated on it, but I have looked at it. Even that is going to get expensive and there's logistics involved. So, is it actually cheaper to Uber back and forth to the office for those 2 days a week? It might be. You might have to look at some of those different strategies or even, hey, your brother's got an extra car or, do you have seriously a family member or a friend that you can say, hey, can I rent this car, borrow this car from you for a few months until mine comes in? You'll find out how much they actually love you. So you need to have a plan B in place if your heart really is set on ordering that new car, yet you need something quickly because you have to go back to the office or for whatever reason you need wheels now. There's a short-term solution and then you look at, ideally what is it long-term. So for example, I have a lovely young couple client up in Chicago. They live in the city, which is really cool. They're planning to start a family and their goal is to have, 2, maybe 3 kids over the next 7 years. And so they wanted to get an SUV that would last them that long and get them through building their family so that they only had to buy one car. They were making, a very smart strategic decision, just not factoring in how bad the market was because they didn't realize just how bad it is. And of course, the one they want is the Kia Telluride, of course, like everybody else, which is why you can't get them. And so I had to give them a reality check and say, unless you're open to paying through the nose for a used one, we're not going to be able to get a Kia Telluride. in 2 weeks when you have to go drive into the suburbs. The wife now has to go into the office that's in the suburbs a couple of 2 to 3 days a week with this new job. So, they've not had to have a car because they've lived in the city of Chicago with all the great public transportation. So I said, okay, let's think outside the box here. I realize that you're, looking long term and thinking really strategically, and that is awesome. However, let's look at this from a different angle. You're not planning to have 3 kids right away. And unless you get pregnant with triplets, which, okay, could happen, hopefully not, you're planning to have 1 kid in the next year or 2. Why don't we look at a smaller SUV that will, get you through 1 kid, maybe even into 2 kids, and, do what you need it to do. It will hold its value well so that in 2 years, when the market is hopefully better and we can actually get you a Kia Telluride, we'll be able to sell this car, and, it will have served you well for the amount of money that you have paid for it, during that time of use. And, or we can look used. Here are 2 choices. And they just really were not comfortable going with a used car, especially with the high prices, which I respect. And so they were open to my idea. And this is where we were able to find a Subaru Forester Sport, which has a lot of the cool orange accents and is just a little bit cooler because they really wanted that cool factor. And that's going to work for them. And they like it. I didn't want them to buy a car that they didn't like, that they hated. The first thing I did was say, hey, you like the Telluride, the Hyundai Palisade is underneath essentially the same car, just the styling is different and it rides a little different. And I can get Palisades all day long, but not the Telluride. And they just didn't care for the styling of the Palisade. And I don't want anybody to drive something that they hate. So fortunately, we were able to settle on the Forester that they really like. Even though it's not nearly as fancy as what they wanted, they realized, okay, the situation is not normal. This is the best decision for us, knowing what our financial plans are and our family plans are. And I think they made a really good decision. And, we're going to be able to get that Forester, hopefully within the next 3 to 4 weeks. It's due in the beginning of March. So fingers crossed. So that's just an example of how we had to take a step back and shift our thinking to a totally different tactical solution because the strategic desire, the strategic plan was not going to happen in the time frame that they needed it to happen. So kudos to them for being open to thinking outside the box and being open to my suggestions. And I think it's going to work out really great for them in the long run. So I hope this information has been helpful to you. If you find yourself in this situation where suddenly you're going to have to start going back to work, I can't even imagine having to commute in traffic and go into an office anymore. Been working from home for over 20 years, so I'm just not going to happen in my world. But if it's going to happen in your world and you need a vehicle to do that, I hope this information has been helpful to you. And good luck getting into a car. There are cars out there. It just may not be the car that you really want. It may not be your first choice, and you may need to, I'm not going to call it settle. I refuse to call it settle. You may have to make a tactical decision in order to keep the long-term strategic goal and plan in mind, because we are not living in normal times. So folks, I promise I will get back to the whole series on electrified cars, but I thought this information was more important to get out right away. Again, if you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out to me via my website, thecarchick.com. I am going on vacation in early March, thank goodness, but my wonderful assistant, Wendy, will always be there to book a car chat appointment for when I get back, and we're always happy to give you advice, even if that advice is, you need to keep what you have right now, or you need to buy out your lease. I am always going to give you the honest truth. And if I really feel that what you want to do is just not in line with the current market and you are best to keep what you have, I will tell you how to do that if you need to buy out your lease. But I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to work with people that I'm not able to add a ton of value to. If it's something where I think, you just need to call the dealer, like with this Maybach person, I'm like, I don't think I can add a lot of value. Here's my contact at this dealership. Here's the reality of the situation. They'll take good care of you. That's what I'm going to do. I'm always going to do what's in the best interest of the people that call me. because I just believe in the full integrity. We don't have enough integrity in this industry, so that's what I'm going to bring to the table. But if you do have questions, and I do feel that I can help you, and you just don't want to deal with this whole thing, you are more than welcome to give me a call, and we will look at what work we have on our plate. And if we have to put you on a wait list, we'll put you on a wait list. If we have room, we will definitely be excited to work with you. So thanks, folks. Drive safely. I'm out of here.
The Straight Shift Podcast is copyright Leanne Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of Leanne Shattuck or The Car Chick.